When a relentless movie trend like zombie horror comes into the market and saturates the hell out of film and television, it's always fun to see when a proper satire comes along. 2013's Warm Bodies is probably one of the most surprisingly good satires that's come out in recent years. This blends a couple of different genres together and uses the zombie cliché as its appeal, and the result is a thoughtful and overall feel-good satire. In the midst of a zombie apocalypse, a former teenager turned zombie spends his days moseying along and eating brains. A real pattern of events changes, however, when a beautiful girl triggers his human sensibilities to start back up, as he's now in love with this girl. What seems like a mostly generic setup actually follows through and delivers the goods quite effectively. The zombie cliches are addressed and used for comic effect, and they work well in the feel-good aspect of this dark and dreary setting to build a pretty comedic contrast. I think it's hilarious but also very debatable to say that this may be one of the defining date movies of the generation. It gives us the same melodramatic setup of classic date movies of the 80s, but then delivers the fun and clever satire of the zombie film trope. It keeps it from being too conventional and has some unfamiliar aspects that give it a fun and refreshing feeling when watching it. These days, the date movie market is pretty much cornered with the same kind of generic stuff. In what is such an overdone market of films, Warm Bodies works for multiple film genres: romantic, comedic, and horror. Speaking of horror, this even works as a refreshing horror comedy. I think this one stands out very differently than a lot of even our favorite horror comedies, and it's very admirable in that sense. To distinguish itself in an even smaller library of films definitely makes it worthy of praise. This film isn't for everybody. It follows some very generic cliches, even though it mocks them, and it may turn people off because of those aspects. I think this movie is going to be remembered as a great satire and effective experiment in crossing genres. One of the most unique movies of recent years, this one serves as an unconventional entry into monster movie making.